As you're listening, be thinking of either questions or comments or inputs that you would like to make following the presentations. So we have a land-based example sandwiched between two marine examples today. So first up, we're going to hear from Andrew Mckenzie on the project SW Grow. Andrew's based in the Outer Hebrides here in Scotland. So he's sitting presumably in Stornoway, I would imagine. No, he's shaking his head. He'll tell us where he's sitting in a minute. And I'm sitting in Inverness in the Highlands of Scotland. We'll then hear about this cereal project from Dr. Peter Martin. Peter, I believe, he's in Orkney somewhere. I won't hazard a guess as to where in Orkney he is. And following that, we'll hear from Berta Danielsdottir, who is the CEO of the Ocean Cluster, and she'll be talking about the project DISRUPTAQUA. So we'll hear from each of those in turn, and then we'll have questions, answers, and some discussion after that. So each of the speakers has 5 minutes or thereabouts. We've got a little bit of latitude in terms of time, but please don't take it too much more than that, otherwise I'll have to ask you to speed up. So I think moving on, we will hear first from Andrew Mckenzie from Lewscastle College in the Outer Hebrides, and Andrew's going to tell us a little bit about SW Grow. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen with you and I will start the presentation. I take it you can all hear me.
Yes, we can hear. Well, I can hear you.
I can hear you.
It's fine. Right, so starting off then. My name, as you know, is Andrew Mckenzie. I'm a lecturer in engineering and also the project manager for this project at Lewscastle College and the Outer Hebrides, part of the University of the Highlands and Islands. And I'm not in Stornoway. I'm at home, which is in the Eye Peninsula, which is about 10 miles from Stornoway. So I'm not an expert in algae. So I noticed that many of my colleagues in the team, we have a very strong team, are on hand to answer any questions that I can't answer, and I'd invite them to participate. So I'll describe the project and look at the business potential and opportunities for what we're doing. As you can see, it's about increasing innovation and transferring technology to SMEs in the area. So what are we doing and where are we from? Well, this is the map of partners, and they range from the far north, as you can see, in Greenland, to the south in Ireland, where we have 2 partners. Our main aim is to support small and medium enterprises in the seaweed industry. We're looking to improve the quality of the seaweed project, seaweed product, by developing the character and brand for NPA seaweed. And we intend to carry out a number of tests, maybe up to 4 pilot tests, where we will try out new technologies and methods, and we will evaluate them, making the results widely available. As far as Lewscastle College is concerned, we are the lead partner, so we manage and run the project. So these are the people who will lead for the various other parts of the project. In terms of quality improvement, we want to encourage cultivation and improve the use of energy and reduce and recycle waste. And these are the people involved mainly in doing that. Under the branding and characterization, we look to develop a quality brand for the NPA seaweed. And to do that, we need to identify the structure of the product and its nutritional quality. And these are the people who will do that. We're going to do piloting with all partners involved, but on dissemination, our Irish colleagues at Udaras will take the lead. We will carry out at least 3 pilots, and you can see that these are in energy, waste recycling and cultivation. And this will be the outcome. Establishing a brand of excellence for the seaweed that we produce in the NPA area. The keyword is sustainable, and we were asked to look at the business potential and opportunities relating to our outcome. So firstly, we can look at tourism, and it could be a very interesting area because at the moment we have whiskey trails in Scotland. So why not seaweed trails in Iceland or Ireland or wherever we're going to produce the seaweed? Cultivation has potential, and we wish to encourage moving from foraging in the wild to cultivated. And in terms of processing, we look to develop the potential of renewable energy. That's wind, hydro, photovoltaic, geothermal, and looking to apply these to waste and drying, probably by gasification, and looking to the innovation that we can bring to these areas and opportunities we think that may be there. So turning to opportunities now, we want to develop employment and create diversity. The industry tends to be somewhat male dominated at the moment, but there are some very good examples in Faroe Islands and in Greenland where women play a very important part in the senior management of seaweed production. We aim to assist in retaining population in the sparsely populated northern areas. And one of the good things about seaweed growing is that you don't need many tools to start the process. We think that branding for small producers will be a growth area, and everybody these days is concerned in relation to COVID, concerned with food security. So we can bring climate-friendly solutions to the industry, and seaweed is very good at capturing carbon and nutrients that maybe we don't want. And the project won't use fertilizers or pesticides. So we can sell the product as coming from pristine waters and emphasize that seaweed cultivation does not compete with existing land. So that's a big plus. So this is who we are and what we're doing. So we want to encourage small and medium enterprises and to develop the potential for seaweed in the northern areas. Thank you.
Andrew, are you there?
Yep.
I think we lost you for a moment.
So that's my presentation finished.
Great, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Many thanks, Andrew. Many thanks. I think I lost you for a minute at the end there. I don't know whether that was me or somewhere else in the system.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So as I said earlier, everybody, we'll come back to questions after we've heard from all 3 speakers. So I would now like to pass on to Dr. Peter Martin from Orkney College, also part of the University of the Highlands and Islands. And Peter is going to tell us about the cereal project. Over to you, Peter.
We're bringing him in. Peter will bring an Arctic and historical
Either Rob, I seem to be picking up another of the breakout rooms.
So am I.
Shall I just try and talk over the top of it?
I think you should. It sounds like session 1. I'll let our people know that there's an overlap.
Okay. I think Rachel might have gone to try and sort it. So.
Okay.
sessions and Northern Culture. He's chair of the Board of Governors of the University of the Arctic, and he's the former president of the International Arctic.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm talking about the cereal project, and in the first slide, I provide an introduction to the project. The map at the top shows the partners in the project, which was actually led by Mattis in Iceland, and then the other partners in the project were the Agricultural University in Iceland, Nibio in northern Norway, the Agricultural Centre in the Faroes, Forestry and Agri-Foods Agency in Newfoundland, and UHI's Agronomy Institute here in Orkney. The aims of the project were to increase the growing of cereals across the region to reduce the dependence on imports and create new sources of income for growers, and also to provide local ingredients for high provenance food and drink products, thereby strengthening the food and drink industry. Of the cereals, the project concentrated on barley because this is the cereal most suited to northern regions. The main project activities focused on knowledge exchange in three main areas: helping farmers to grow, harvest and process the crop to a suitable standard for a range of end uses, working with millers, bakers and other stakeholders in the food industry to use barley for food products, and then collaborating with distilleries and breweries to use local barley for beer and whiskey. Malting of barley was also included in this area. The project developed as a response.
Can I just interrupt everybody just for a quick second? Sorry, Peter. Peter.
Most partner regions.
Yeah, I'm just going to see if I can get Rob. Peter, could I just ask you, could everybody, we just got a message, could everybody make sure they switched off their
Peter, could we just pause a second, please? We're trying to get rid of the background noise here.
Yeah.
So if everybody could make sure they've switched off YouTube. Because the people that we're hearing are on YouTube for session 1 and it's coming through. So
right,
you could,
okay,
everybody just check that you switched off your YouTube.
And then I listed a few observations that do offer us lessons learned from today. Very, very briefly.
Right, that sounds
much better. Sorry about the interruption, Peter. It actually make your presentation better now because we haven't got background noise.
Yeah, that sounds good. Peter, if you want to rewind and start from the top again, if you feel more comfortable doing that, might be sensible.
I still have the background noise.
Right, it's just reappeared again, hasn't it?
Yeah. Peter, it may be that you've not switched off your YouTube.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's very important to switch off the YouTube because there's a delay, which means you can hear it again. That's what you need to switch off, whatever that's in the background.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's much better.
Right. Now, now I need to find where you are. Oh, there we are. Okay. Right. Okay.
All right. So, yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, if you want to start from the top again, Peter, then that's grand.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I won't go through the partners again. The partners are there on the map. The aims of the project were to expand cereal production, especially barley, in the region, and to provide local ingredients for high provenance food and drink products, thereby also strengthening the food and drink industry. The main project activities focused on knowledge exchange in 3 main areas: helping farmers to grow, harvest and process the crop to reach a suitable standard for a range of end users. Secondly, working with millers and bakers and other stakeholders so that barley could be used for food products. And then working with distilleries and breweries to use local barley for beer and whiskey production. And we also included malting in this. The project was a response to several important drivers. One of these was the high dependence of most of the partner region on cereal imports. Another one was the perception that all the partner regions, as a result of climate change, were experiencing warmer growing seasons, which were much more favourable for barley growing than had been experienced in the past. Then we also had a greater availability of newer barley varieties, which were coming out of the breeding programs in Iceland and also in Scandinavia. And at the same time, we saw increasing potential for supplying local grain for higher value food and drink purposes as a result of the increase in demand for high provenance food and drink products, partly resulting from the expansion in tourism. And alongside this, we'd also seen tremendous expansion in microbreweries and microdistilleries, which offered exciting opportunities for innovation. In the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to concentrate on the barley to beverage value chain. And so with this, sorry. Right. Okay, yeah. I'm going to start by looking at some of the innovations that we brought in to this particular value chain. The first innovation really concerns the type of barley which is used for making beer and whiskey. In most sort of southern European areas, special type of barley is used called malting barley. And this has been specially bred by plant breeders to give you reasonable grain yields, but above all, very high alcohol production on distillation or brewing. And unfortunately though, most of these are unsuited to growing in northern areas because they require a longer growing season than we have. In the absence of these special malting barley varieties, the innovation that we brought into the project was to simply encourage growers and breweries and distilleries to use the barleys which they had locally available. Now, this concept was one which we'd actually explored earlier on in the Agronomy Institute from about 2004 through collaborations with breweries and distilleries in Scotland. And this involved our work with an ancient type of Scottish barley called Bear. And with this, and with the breweries and the distilleries, we produced a number of new products. Some of those you can see in the photograph at the top left of the photograph. So an example of where this was used, actually, again, the use of non-special malting barleys for being used to produce beverage products actually comes from the island of Raasay over on the west coast of Scotland, where the project helped a new distillery there, Raasay Distillery, to source varieties of barley from Iceland and from Scandinavia, which were tested. They grew successfully. The photograph on the top right there shows the field approaching its first harvest. This was actually the first time in living memory that barley had been grown on Raasay. The grain was malted and then used for whiskey production, and this was repeated for 3 years and has been a sort of a proof of concept for both the distillery and other interested growers on the island that this is actually possible, and we can do it by using types of barley which are not necessarily malting barley. The other area of innovation which we brought into the project is in the area of malting. Normally for malting, malt is imported into the region, and the malt is made in more southerly areas by large companies using very, very large malting bins. It wouldn't be feasible to transport barley from the northern regions to these companies because of the transport costs and because also the scale. And of course, it's not really what we want to do anyway. So we looked at basically how could we help companies in the north to do their own malting. There are small scale malting plants which can be purchased, but these are extremely expensive and certainly beyond the means of anyone within the project. So what we did was we explored the possibility of companies using a traditional floor malting methods as are used in the Scottish distillery, in a few Scottish distilleries. And we were very fortunate in the project to have a distillery in Orkney which still uses floor malting methods, and they agreed to offer placements to some of the associate partners in other countries so that they could learn these methods. And the photograph in the middle on the left there shows associate partners from the Faroes and Iceland at Highland Park doing this malting placement. Altogether, we had 8 associate partners who did this, and a number of those went on to make their own malt using the techniques. Another innovation which we tried to introduce to the project relates more to the products once they've started to be marketed. And this is basically to try to introduce into the marketing story the local growers who were involved in producing the barley which was used by the breweries or the distilleries. This is a method which has actually been used very, very successfully by one of our collaborators in Scotland called Braclady Distillery. And the picture on the left there shows, it comes from their website, and it refers to one of the whiskies they produce in collaboration with ourselves, Bear Barley 2010. And you can see the Orkney growers who have produced the barley are given prominent recognition by the distillery on their website. And this is the sort of thing that we would like to see done with most of the products where this type of, where local barley is being used. So our vision, if you like, for what we were trying to produce is sketched out in the photographs at the top of this third slide. And by the end of the project, we were collaborating with many stakeholders who were involved in different stages of the value chain. So the first stage of the chain is farmers growing barley for beverages, as you can see there, the top left-hand photograph. Then we have the local malting of the grain. And then we have new whiskies and beers being produced from the local grain. And then in our vision, by helping breweries and distilleries produce these high provenance products, we hope to be strengthening them as companies so that they can then go on and evolve into larger companies doing more things like, for example, tours of breweries or distilleries, offering food, offering accommodation, having visitor centres. And as a result of the amalgam of all of these activities, what we aspire to do is to generate increased local employment in local communities and stimulate the development perhaps of other local enterprises as well. So finally, just to sort of a few reflections on the sustainability of what we did in the project, because the project actually finished in 2018. I think it was an excellent start in laying foundations for what we wanted to do. But I think realistically, we still have to admit that there's a lot still to be done to make this much more wider and much more widespread within the northern region. In particular, I would say that we need to be doing more in the way of breeding and testing locally adapted barley varieties, especially if we could produce malting varieties which were well adapted to the northern regions. I think there's a clear need also for development of small-scale local malting facilities. And then in some parts of the region where cereal growing was not as advanced as others, there's a real need for appropriate machinery to be introduced. Obviously, in 2020, COVID-19 has had a big impact on northern tourism and our stakeholders. And this has resulted in things like closure of tourism destinations, a reduced demand for some of the products that they were producing, partial closures of distilleries and breweries. And at this stage, it's not really clear when or in what form business is going to return to normal. But it's going to be important to include sustainability into this when it does happen. And I think for the barley to beverage value chain, I think what is going to be particularly one area of particular importance is going to be trying to reduce carbon emissions. And that could be both related to the agricultural processes involved, but also the industrial processes, because malting and distilling are very energy intensive. And then of course, there's the potential impact on tourism if, for example, carbon emissions reduction caps are placed on things like international travel. And under these circumstances, perhaps we might be needing to be looking more towards the domestic tourist market and perhaps giving more emphasis to marketing using the internet and sort of exporting to overseas companies to reach overseas customers, rather than expecting them to come to our own countries. And I think really that's basically what I'd like to say in this presentation.
Excellent, Peter. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure there will be some comments and questions from listeners on that. I was particularly interested in how it's a very clear response to particular challenges, and I really like the vision and the longer term thinking that you outlined there. So yeah, really fascinating stuff. Okay, so that was our land-based example. Now we're going back to marine, and I'd like to introduce Berta Danielsdottir, who is the CEO of Iceland's Ocean Cluster. And Berta is going to talk to us about the DISRUPTAQUA project, which is looking at the adoption and use of new technology in marine supply chains, I guess. Berta, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm stepping in here on behalf of our lead project partner, which is Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And I'm also the one that is not an English native speaker, but I was very fascinated about the algae and the seaweed, because I think these are the most exciting industries now, of course, related to the ocean. And I can only hope that we can have a very established whiskey business here in Iceland one day, like you have in Scotland. But I can tell you about the barley. We do use it in chocolate here in Iceland. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell you a little bit about my cluster and why I'm here. So like you said, my name is Berta and I'm the CEO of the Iceland Ocean Cluster, and I have been holding that position for the past 4 years. Our cluster is leading in creating value and discovering new opportunities by connecting entrepreneurs, business and knowledge in the blue economy. We have been leading the project 100% fish, which is about full fish utilization, here in Iceland for many years. And I think that's one of the major reasons why I'm participating now in the project DISRUPTAQUA. But DISRUPTAQUA, the name might not tell you a lot. So what is the project about? Our project aims to evaluate which specific information and communication technology, and especially blockchain, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence are most suitable and applicable for Arctic seafood business. These are mouth breakers, these words. And we're going to do this by articulating the benefits and costs and understanding the route to practical application. We want to identify and develop a model that ensures full blockchain traceability of high-value seafood products. Our model needs to reach through the full supply chain or from primary producers to consumers. And at the same time, we need to ensure that all value associated to provenance, environmental stewardship, quality, and trust is maintained, and especially for the SMEs in the remote or sparsely populated areas. Our region, the Northern Periphery and Arctic, are large players in the aquaculture and fisheries, and as such, they do represent a very important food industry across the whole region. These sectors help to underpin economic growth of the coastal and rural communities. They provide essential jobs and incomes to the region. Food that comes from our region has a unique reputation with value associated to the provenance, place, people, and of course, our culture. Our objective is to identify and develop a model that ensures full blockchain traceability of high-value seafood products through the supply chain, which spans from the primary producer to the consumer, and at the same time, ensuring associated value, as I mentioned before. Our lead partner is Highland and Island Enterprises. They lead the regional growth and development across Scotland's Highlands and Islands, supporting the rural economy and improving competitiveness to help build a fairer, more inclusive society. Other project partners, including the Ocean Cluster, which I am representing, is Nofima in Norway. I mean, Nofima is one of the leading applied research institutes for food, fisheries, and agriculture. They do all the research, and their reputation extends far from the rural coast of northern Norway, and they are very active partners in a number of programs that are related and beneficial to our project in the DISRUPTAQUA. We haven't finished our project like you have done, Peter. So we started our project in the early 2020, but as everyone else, we have had to make some adaptations to our program in relation to COVID-19. I mean, it has affected everyone. But hopefully we'll be able to visit and meet sooner rather than later. So we know what COVID means for the project, but what does this project mean for the region? What are the barriers in our region to attain such a goal? Are they related to culture, heritage, or common goals, or just the way we do business differently? The nations are different in so many ways, but at the same time, we are very much alike. And we need to keep in mind that globally, it is estimated that we will require as much food and protein sources in the next 50 years as we have been producing in the world in the last 500 years. Land might be constrained, but in our mind, the sea is not. We have the opportunity to produce more food from the sea, but it needs to be traceable, information has to be transparent, but secured for all stakeholders. Just a small example from me, if we would only compare Iceland and Norway, there's a huge difference in how we process our fish. Whilst Iceland processes almost everything we catch before we export it, Norwegians tend to export a lot of whole fish. So how can we utilize the same traceability channels for such a different type of product? These are all challenges we are facing in our project, and I look forward to speaking to you all about them later in the session, and especially to have your thoughts on the matter. So, at the end, to sum up our project, we will try to develop how new solutions could be used by businesses to add value to their products and ensure sustainable production for the benefit of us all. Thank you.
Many thanks, Berta. A really interesting run through DISRUPTAQUA, and noted that you're at the beginning of the journey with this project as opposed to coming towards the end of the journey. So lots to do on that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, we've heard three really interesting and diverse examples there of innovation in bio-based industries sectors. Now it's your turn. So I would welcome any questions that you have, any comments that you have, any inputs that you would like to make. you'll be familiar, I'm no doubt, with the raising your hand functionality of Zoom. So if you wish to speak or ask a question, please do raise your hand. Perhaps while you're thinking about that, I could pose a question to each of you as a kind of kick-off. Some really interesting detail in each of the three presentations. I wonder your experience of developing and running the project as far as it's got, and also looking to the future with the project. What would be your, if you had one or two key messages to others about your project, how it's developed and where it's going, what would those key messages be? And I'll maybe go back to Andrew first of all. Sorry to put you on the spot, Andrew.
Oh, it's all right. It's okay. Here I am. Key message. Well, I suppose it's that we need to make, in our case, algae growing and production a bit more visible. It tends to happen behind closed doors in factories, and that's why I'm quite interested in the tourism thing, because it's not really at the moment very sexy. It's not like whiskey, where it's great fun to go around the distillery, but there's no reason why it couldn't be more visible to the public. And if you think about it, if you produce lovely seaweed that's effectively organic and pure, but people don't appreciate it and want to buy it, then what's the point? So that's why getting a brand established is for us really important. So I suppose that's the key message. Make seaweed producing sexy if you can, and make it visible, and develop the brand. There are lots of people in my team in this room, so if there are any of those who'd like to offer an opinion, then I invite them to do so.
I'm just thinking, Andrew, if you're looking at the tourism angle, you maybe need to try and make the tasting sessions after the visit the equivalent of a distillery visit somehow.
Sure, maybe we could combine the two, because we have a very nice distillery in Harris now.
Of course,
they seem to be popping up everywhere. So yeah, I think absolutely. And it's amazing actually how many different forms of seaweed, of algae, you can have to consume. And I think it is getting to be more visible, but I still think that we have an opportunity to really promote the purity and the cleanliness of the beautiful ocean that we are surrounded by.
So visibility and promotion and branding there. Brilliant, thank you. Peter.
Yeah, I think from our project, I think one of the things that sort of that I remember most about the project is what a good collaboration it was between all the partners. And I think partly the reason, and of course the associate partners, partly the reason for that was that it actually built the Northern Periphery project itself, built on a preparatory project, and the preparatory project actually built on a smaller NORA project, where we actually got to know each other extremely well. And so we went into the project with a very, very good background knowledge about the situation of cereal growing across the whole Northern Periphery. We went into the project with a diverse group of researchers, but all researchers who were sort of specialists, tended to be specialists in individual areas. So, but together we made a really good team, which was able to cover many different areas. And I think that really is partly one of the reasons why I think the cereal project was actually really so successful, was that it had a very, very strong background foundation, and we worked really well as a team.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you,
Rob,
Peter.
could I just add a little bit to what I said at the beginning?
Of course.
Berta, I'm sorry to butt in, but if we're talking about marketing for seaweed, it's important, I think, that we promote the renewable energy aspect, because seaweed drying is very heavy in energy, and at the moment there's a lot of fossil fuel being used, so that would also help us, and is going to be a very important part of what we achieve at the end, I think.
Yeah, and I think particularly given a lot of the areas where seaweed is cultivated, energy is generated, but it's not always easy to move that energy somewhere else. So using it in situ might be a significant benefit. Yeah, okay, thank you for that. Over to you, Berta. From your experience of the project thus far, what would be your key messages in terms of either the thinking around the project or development of the project, or where you see it proceeding?
I think I can more learn from Andrew and Peter about this, and I envy Peter to have his project pre-COVID. But a key message is what we have done now in those strange times is that we have been sticking to the plan. Even though we have had to adapt it, we just take on new technology. We are constantly using Zoom meetings, and we completely stick to the plan, even though we can't meet each other. So I think that's one of the things that we learn from this, is just to adapt to a new situation. And also, I think, because you mentioned marketing and branding, one thing I have actually experienced here in Iceland, even though we are a fishery nation and we are proud of it, people tend to be a little bit they're not proud of working with fish. You don't see people raising their hands and say, yes, 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 I work in the fisheries, and are happy about it. So maybe just adapt a little bit how people think of fisheries, get to know how valuable the fisheries is for all the nations. So I think that could be something that we could work on. And also, because you mentioned the seaweed, Andrew, that for us, the word blockchain, a lot of people associate it only with money transfer. So they're saying blockchain, so what are you doing? Are you transferring money? So we have been trying to sort of inform people that blockchain is something, it's about the supply chain, it's about the transparency of the data and the security, and it's visible to all stakeholders. So I think I can actually learn more from the other two gentlemen, and which I can definitely adapt to our project with this.
Okay.
And
Excellent.
also maybe one extra comment is that I think actually what we are doing with a project like this that goes over a large region, which the gentleman had pictures of, is those triple helix effect. We have the academia, we have the commercial side, and we have the research institute with us. And I think that's how we can harvest the best knowledge from each and every sector around it and create the best project. So I think the combination of the partners is extremely important for the success of projects like this.
Okay, thank you very much, Berta. Okay, is there anyone have questions or comments, either based on the presentations or what you've heard?
Just maybe a general question. You know, what are the current trends for potential markets for your products? You know, the opportunities for the MPA with the products that you're developing, and also any trends that you see evolving in your regions for innovative bio-based industries.
Andrew, you're getting used to going first, so.
I know, it's terrible. I feel I'm being bullied, but never mind. I suppose the trend is that, although I've said we need to be more visible, in terms of products in the shops, you do see seaweed being there on the shelves. And I think, like I mentioned previously about food security, I think people are very much more interested in food, although we've still got McDonald's and Burger King and all these people. But there have never been more programs about food and cooking. And I do think that there's a huge potential in certainly celebrity chefs promoting the use of seaweed in their dishes. Roy, do you want to say something on that? I see that your camera's on.
Well, I was just going to follow up. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Roy Bartle. I'm one of Andrew's colleagues at Lewis Castle College, UHI, and I work on the drying aspects of the project. I was just going to offer the thought that at the moment, the seaweed market is a niche market that is relatively price insensitive. So if a person wants to buy seaweed, they will buy it and they're not too concerned about the price. It would be good, and I think it's probably rather necessary, if the industry is going to grow, and in particular for small and medium-sized enterprises, that seaweed becomes more commonplace. There needs to be something unique about it, and that's part of the work that we're doing on the branding. But it also needs to be something that is more commonly found on our tables and in our supermarkets and in our media. So there are just a few thoughts.
Thank you.
May I, Rob?
Of
Didn't
course,
raise my
Berta.
hand.
Yeah,
I just
of
raised
course.
it in the video.
I saw it.
So because we were speaking about the seaweed industry, and also we are always focusing on the environment. We have a sister cluster in US called Project Blue. It's a part of the Southern Connecticut University. And they are looking a lot into the kelp industry there as well. So we have created a picture of the kelp value machine, because we have done this in Iceland for the fish value machine, where we put one fish in and there is zero waste. It's a cartoon, it's very simple, but they have also done it for the kelp value machine. So Andrew, maybe I'll just drop you an email after the session and I'll send you a picture of it. So when you're branding, when you're marketing, when you show people the value of it and how you're utilizing it, because you were speaking about the fossil fuels. In Iceland, of course, we are lucky we have all that geothermal power, which we're using for drying, for instance. But I'm going to send you the picture, and I dare you here on this YouTube channel to draw something similar for the seaweed.
Brilliant, Berta. That's good. Well, I love that. Some spontaneous collaboration. That's what this is
Why
all
not?
about. Fantastic. Is there anything while you have the floor there, Berta? Is there anything you wanted to add around onto what you've already said about trends and market opportunities that might result from DISRUPTAQUA?
I think from the perspective of DISRUPTAQUA, we will be more or less focusing on the SMEs, and especially in those rural areas, because they are the ones that somehow very often don't get a seat at the table. We have those big processors that are shipping everything. They want to have their own traceability system, their own blockchain system. So I think the smaller companies, the SMEs, and especially the people I love the most, the individuals that are entrepreneurs, they go out there and they create something out of the ocean with the fish. They create something new. I think they will gain the most from it. They will have access to a larger market, more distribution channels, because I think we all know that if you want to get some kind of food product to the market, a distribution channel is usually one of your biggest hurdles to overcome. Just sending fish from Iceland to the US. I mean, Iceland is every day they're victim of food fraud. They put some fish from Alaska, I'm not going to name anyone, on the plate, and they say it's Icelandic, which is not. It's not an Atlantic cod. So we need to be careful about that, and I think that traceability system, the blockchain system, it will help a lot for the consumer. They will be knowing where the fish is coming from.
Yeah,
they know it was caught in the North Atlantic Ocean and was processed there and was shipped to them from the North Atlantic Ocean. We are not fishing, sending it to Asia to be processed and then have it shipped back frozen. We're not doing that.
Okay. No, interesting. Okay, thank you.
Consumers and SMEs, they will benefit the most.
Yeah, great. Peter.
Yeah.
Trends, market opportunities. You did allude to some of them in your presentation. Is there anything more that you want to say around?
Yeah. Well, I think there are a couple of there are several areas there. One is that obviously local food and local beverage products have become very, very popular, becoming increasingly popular. And so, I mean, you see that particularly with tourists that go to northern areas. They want to try local food, and that doesn't mean just be food that's cooked locally, but it means food that includes local ingredients in it. So, from the cereal point of view, you know, this was part of the rationale for the project, was putting local cereal grains into local bakery products or into local beverages. On the export market side, again, we're seeing high provenance products being of particular interest. So where the product has a very clear national or regional identity, which of course the northern area, northern region, northern periphery regions do have a very distinctive identity, which is very easy to translate into a marketing story. I think looking at some of the beverage products as well, I mean, in the past, I suppose, whiskies have always traditionally been thought either to be Scottish or to be thought of in terms of North America or Ireland, perhaps. But we have in the past 20 years or so seen a number of other nations coming forward. So Swedish whiskey, for example, has its own identity. Japanese whiskies have their own identity. And there's no reason why other parts of the northern periphery shouldn't develop their own styles of whiskies, and I'm sure these would find their own clientele to follow. And I think probably also another aspect to it is that, again, going back to tourism, visitor centres have, certainly in Scotland, we've seen this with distilleries and breweries. You know, the even fairly moderately sized ones now have their own visitor centres and offer tours and all these other attractions. And again, there's no reason why that sort of thing shouldn't be much more widespread throughout the northern periphery. Yeah, so I think that'd be my reflections on that.
Thanks, Peter. Well, there you go. I've learned something. I didn't even know Swedish whiskey was a thing.
Rob, can I just add
Andrew,
something? If we're talking about trends, I'm struck by something Peter showed us, and something I suppose I've been aware of, and that is that producing the raw material is not a very profitable business. Anyone who is a sheep farmer like I am knows that the people that make the money are not people like me. It's the people who add value. And I think one of the trends we should be encouraging, if it's not happening, and it probably isn't happening enough, is to add value to the product. And that's why in our project, characterizing and looking at the nutritional value and the purity of the seaweed will add value to the final product. And I think that is something we really need to encourage, that we add value wherever we can.
Okay. Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got about 15 minutes left. So I'd like to just broaden it out a little bit. So you're all involved in innovative bio-based businesses, and I'd be interested in your take on how those kind of projects, how the development of that industry can support resilient communities. So what's the wider impact, if you like, of the projects on the communities in which they're based? I'm not going to pick on you, Andrew, so I'll ask either of the three of you to go first. Who wants to have a go at that one? Berta. Can you hear me, Berta?
Yes, now I can. I just was stuck. I couldn't unmute. So you were saying what better usage of biomass, how it could.
How do bio-based industries, businesses, what's the wider impact? How can they have a wider positive impact on the communities in which they're located?
I don't have the solution, but I only have the story to tell you. If you look at Iceland, in the past, we were catching the fish and we were processing it and we were exporting and selling it. And we had a lot of waste, which we were throwing away. We started to take the fish skin. Well, we were doing the typical things. We were selling the liver and the dry cod heads, and we were doing all of that. But we started to go a little bit further. So we went into the fish skin, for example, and we started to harvest the collagen from it. And then we are stepping into the pharmaceutical business. So we are creating a lot of jobs, new jobs in new industries. When you look at the pharmaceutical industry, you don't think about fish. You just think about medicine. But these are just natural resources, and we get the collagen from it. If you look at the Icelandic company Keresis, I mean, they're utilizing the cod fish skin to create those little wound healers, which are being sold now to the military in US. And if you have wounds that won't heal, you put it on and it will start to heal. It has been greatly effective with burn victims. We are getting into the natural food industry as well. So people are taking collagen, they're taking the fish oil, the famous lyse, and all sorts of that. So those are all spin-offs from this one small fish that we used to only take the fillet of. Later, we realized the loin was the best part, and we were deheading it. We were drying the head, selling them to Africa and Asia, and utilizing the bones for fish meal. So just the development, when you take a natural product and you start to work further on it and do all the research, which is the triple helix effect, the academia, the commercial, and the research institutes together, then you can create a small wonder. And I don't think in Iceland we can only speak about the fishing industry today, because so much that was wasted, up to 40% before, they are utilized in other industries today and are becoming our biggest export product. So we very often say that the fisherman today is the pharmaceutical of tomorrow, because probably in the long run, pharmaceutical industries tend to have more money for both research, and somehow the raw material is more expensive there. That one day, what we are selling our fish parts into pharmaceutical industry will be more valuable than the fish fillets we export. So I think this will have a great impact and can have a great impact. Also the seaweed industry, tourism around it. I mean, seaweed, you can have a seaweed that tastes like bacon, Andrew. I mean, who doesn't want a seaweed bacon? So there's a lot happening there. And I think it will only have a positive effect, but we have to jump on the wagon and we have to move on and continue. Don't just look at fish and it's just fish. I'm going to boil it and hand it to you with potatoes. It's a lot more.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It resonates with a conversation that I had yesterday with some colleagues, and we were talking about food and drink businesses. need to think about not just being a food and drink business.
No.
There are actually other opportunities, not necessarily in that sector, that they could be taking. So yeah, a very powerful message, I think there. Andrew, I'm going to come to you. Sorry?
Add one thing, because you said drink business.
Mm-hmm.
You know Red Bull, the energy drink. The biggest success in Iceland now is an energy drink with collagen in it. Who thought in 2020 you were drinking a can of fish? So it's an energy drink with collagen in it, and of course a lot of caffeine, but no sugar. But this is actually happening, and we have to move more forward with these thinking. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Andrew, I'm going to come to you because Berta didn't mention seaweed. So
you didn't? I shouldn't believe it. Well, in the wider context, as Roy said, if seaweed becomes more available, then it is going to attract the vegans and the vegetarians. And there is that trend already that people are eating less meat and they want other products, and maybe seaweed can help with that. The other aspects really are, firstly, jobs. I think that a lot of people, because, as I said before, seaweed production and processing tends to be a bit hidden, that people might start thinking about, well, are there job opportunities here, especially in the remote areas? So that would be one area that I think our project could have some effect. But also, I think the biggest factor would be if we can get renewables for processing and drying, usually drying is the biggest part. If we can get renewables into the processing, then I think there's a great opportunity there. In a small way, obviously climate change, but if we look at the resources that are available in the various countries, like in the Western Isles, it's considered to be the wind capital of Europe. But most of the seaweed drying is done using fossil fuels. In Iceland, there's obviously the geothermal. And I think that because it is such a high use of energy, and in the Faroes, we're looking at doing a pilot for hydro using a turbine to give energy to the processing. So I think this could have quite a big impact. And also, if you think about it, if you are going to do that, then you need engineers to put their energy renewable devices in place and to maintain them and so on. So and the other thing we are trying to encourage is sharing of infrastructure with SMEs. So it might be that we could have one big turbine and we could maybe supply 4 or 5 producers with the energy, and then it's obviously very sustainable in that sense.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Peter, do you have anything to add on this question?
I think basically it was probably outlined a little bit, I suppose, in the vision that I outlined in the presentation, which is basically that what we like to think of is sort of local nuclei for development being focused on or including distilleries or breweries, where of course we have our local growers as well. And the local growing of barley, that helps the farmers, it helps the contractors, it helps the local agricultural suppliers. We then have the breweries or the distilleries possibly doing the malting of the local barley, and then get that going into the local whiskey or local beer, attracting tourists to come to the venue to do tours around the distilleries or the breweries, the tourists needing things like accommodation, restaurants, food, And so basically the whole thing feeding into sort of local development. And of course, there'd be no reason why we shouldn't have seaweed enterprises or fish enterprises as well within the same nucleus of development, if you like.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. I've got one, if there are no other questions, I've got one question for you, just a quick 1-minute answer. And again, it's a kind of a looking forward question. So if you kind of fast forward 5 years, who knows where we'll be in 5 years and what the world will look like. What would you like the legacy of your project to be? So what will have changed in 5 years? What will be there in 5 years that isn't there now as a result of your project? And happy for anybody to pitch in first on that one.
Right, I'll go again. I suppose it's what I said in my presentation. It's diversity in jobs. It's more well-paid jobs. It's adding value to the product. And I would love to see a big move away from fossil fuels to renewables, if that's possible. It might be possible in some instances, and certainly I think in Iceland, for instance, with all the geothermal you've got, that's very possible. But that's how I would see it. But higher paid jobs, more diversity, and use of renewables.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrew. Berta, Peter. Berta.
Okay. So I think just to deliver food to the consumers with better transparency, enhanced security, and easier traceability. So we are eliminating food fraud. We are definitely proud of our heritage and where the food is coming from, and it's coming from the ocean. And I think by doing this, I hope that most of our partners, all the SMEs we're going to contact and work with, that they will jump on the low-hanging fruit strategy with us. I hope they will see it as yes, this is something for me to brand my product, and consumers will rather buy my food or my product because it goes through the model from DISRUPTAQUA.
Great, thanks very much. Thank you. And last but not least, Peter.
I think I'd like to see more resilient rural communities as a result of what the project has done, and stronger sort of interconnections along the whole value chain, so that the different links in the chain work closely with each other and recognize what each element of the chain brings to the final product. So that basically producers are given a fairer deal and a fairer recognition for the product that is finally produced.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Rob, if I can just, I see Rachel's giving us a time signal.
But, 2 minutes, yeah.
Just to add that one of the things we are trying to pursue is shared infrastructure, where you have clusters of producers. And that would be great if you could do that. The problem is that many producers think that what they do is commercially in confidence. So that's a legal issue really, but it would be good if we could get clusters of producers working together and using shared resources.
Building trust, I guess.
Yeah,
Rachel's
I
just
need
about
to say one thing. We need to wind it up, but I also need to remind people to stay on Zoom, because we will be going back to the plenary for the rapporteurs. So please, when you leave the room or they boot us back, stay on Zoom. So I pass back to Rob to finalise.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, we're just coming to the end of this. I'd like to thank all the contributors. I think that's a fascinating discussion of 3 really interesting projects. I like the fact that we've had some collaboration happening while we've been in this session, so that's brilliant. I like I like the thinking about where some of the projects have come from and also where they're going. And I think we've very clearly demonstrated the value of that collaboration and collaboration across the whole NPA area. So I've thoroughly enjoyed the session. I've certainly learned something. I hope those of you who've been listening have learned something as well. So I'd just like to thank you all for your contributions. That was excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Great contribution. Yeah.
Great.
Presentation. Thanks.
Stay on Zoom. Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.